Welcome back. Wake up, Barstool. It's time for the football G-Spot with Greg Olsen and Jon Gruden. Let's go, boys.
I love football.
Knock on wood if you're with me, everybody.
Can I finish my point?
All right, boys. We finally got the whole crew here. Coach, congrats. Hula Bowl victory. Looked like you got a little Gatorade shower there with it.
Yeah, thank you. That was a big win for me. I needed it.
All right. So great weekend of football. We got one game left. And we were talking a little bit this first weekend. If you go on X, Twitter, you go on anything, you know what everyone's talking about? The teams that lost. They're not so much talking about the teams that won. There's discussion. It starts with the coaching. And we got three coaches right off the bat that people are in the hot seat with. Sirianni in Philadelphia, LaFleur in Green Bay, and maybe there's two because Harbaugh already got fired. What do you guys do? What LaFleur? Let's start with him. They blow another huge lead. Greg, what do you do if you're Green Bay with this guy?
I think you do nothing. I think the notion that Matt LaFleur's job is potentially in jeopardy is a bit ridiculous. I think what we've found over years, and obviously Coach probably has great perspective on this, is I think everyone is always in such a rush to find a replacement, and so often the replacement is by far worse than who the original coach was. And I think a guy like Matt LaFleur, his track record of offensive play calling and the success they've had, they've lost some tough playoff games, and they've lost some tough games down the stretch and bad endings. And certainly Saturday night is up there. You know, you're up 21-3 at halftime against a team that had showed nothing there in the beginning of the game. And then you end up letting it slide. I just think the notion that you think you're going to upgrade from Matt LaFleur in this hiring cycle is nonsense. So I think Packers fans have every right to be disappointed, frustrated, mad. They certainly need to figure out why they can't close some of these games out. But the notion that they're going to upgrade this coaching cycle from Matt LaFleur, I think is nonsense.
And sticking with that, I agree with you on LaFleur. And I watched that game, and outside of, and I'll ask you, Coach Gruden, the thing that drives me crazy, and I think is devalued a little bit, is timeouts. Like the looseness of calling timeouts sometimes in the second half. You're up against a play clock, rather than take 5 yards in a delay game, you call timeout. You don't like your set, and then you rewind the game to the end, and it's like, man, if I had those timeouts, because the Packers really ran out of time. So it's a two-part. LaFleur, that's all I could see. People criticize his timeout use. Would you keep LaFleur, and what would you have done differently? From the outside looking in, sometimes you see glaring things. I didn't see it with Green Bay. What was your take on that game?
There's no way I would let LaFleur out of the building. I mean, unless anybody has a better candidate. And there's no better candidate. The guy's done a great job transitioning from Aaron Rodgers to Love. Love played great. Love has a bright future. They got to run the football. They can't run the ball with a 21-3 lead. The clock is the enemy. They got nothing going on the ground. We all know they're missing some of their best players. Kraft at tight end, Micah Parsons. They brought in Nate Hobbs to be a corner. They gave him $40 million. He never played. I just think Green Bay has to stay the course. They're going to have to handle the noise, and they got to find a way to run the football more consistently. But you got to give Chicago credit. I'll go back to this, Dave. The Packers lost that game on a stupid high school play. I mean, they fake a bubble screen over there, and guys take off and run down the field, and DJ Moore wins the game. They got to play better football at crunch time. I think some of these Packer players got to look themselves in the eye. You know, when you get a lead like that, your defense needs to slam the door shut, and this vaunted Packer defense did not come through.
And following up, I do have a question on the timeout thing, because as a coach, how do you value those? Like, there's so many times, like that example of what I give, when it almost seems like you're going up the line, it's 3, 2, 1, and it's almost like a knee jerk. Someone called timeout. We don't want the 5 yards. How important is it to you? Is that something you tell your guys? Hey, if we're up against the clock, just eat the 5 yards, because 5 yards versus timeout is apples and oranges to me. How do you look at it?
No, I'm glad you brought that up, Dave. We won the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia years ago. We took 2 timeouts on 3rd down. And I'm not kidding you. One of them was a touchdown to Keyshawn right before the half, and another one was Joe Jurevicius' 71-yard catch and run. You see a look in a single elimination tournament that you know you can't block, or you have a bad play that could cause a horrific result. You take a timeout. What do you want to do? You want to give these timeouts to Brandon Walker and let him take
So you're the opposite.
grave? You got to use these timeouts in critical moments. And I think although it looks bad at times, sometimes they can be lifesavers.
Wow. Greg, you agree with that?
In the second half of the game, I would only take an offensive timeout. I'm talking we're not talking at the end of the game, in a 2-minute drive. I'm talking just third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. I think unless it's like a 3rd and short situation where going from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 6 certainly changes your percentages of converting, I'm taking 5 yards. I think we saw it there at the end in the Philadelphia game. Don't get me wrong, critical 4th down. You want to make sure you have your right play call, but you've been practicing all year. You got to know what your right play call is, and you got to get it in without taking that offensive timeout, because they fail, and instead of being able to stop the clock 3 times, the game's over. You can only stop it twice, and it's over. So I think I'm keeping all of my offensive timeouts. I don't want to call timeouts on offense. I want my defense to call all my timeouts. And we see it so often again, that the ability at the end of the game to not have your timeouts to extend your opportunities kills these teams.
I agree. Coach laughed at us a little bit.
No, I don't want to waste timeouts. There's a big fine line here. You two guys are bobbling your head, agreeing with each other. I don't want to waste a timeout. I'm not an idiot. But let me tell you this. When you got a critical 3rd down and you're in for the money, there's a time and a place to use a timeout.
All right, let's move to the Eagles. And this is a team all the way from the head coach, Sirianni, arguing with wide receivers, A.J. Brown, to their fans being obnoxious, Max. What is going on in Philadelphia? This is a team that they're mad when it's tough to get a read on, because they're mad when they're winning the Super Bowl. But when they get bounced in the first round, people are calling for everybody's head. Again, I don't know how many changes I'd hear. Lane Johnson, I think, is just so critical to this team's offense. Coach, you don't like any coaches getting fired. You like hanging around. You'd rather a guy, you can keep them there till they're dead on the sideline before you call for a coach. But what are the changes that happen in Philadelphia?
I don't know why you even asked me to be on this show. I mean, you just shred me at all costs. Look, when I saw Aaron Andrews' jacket, I knew it was going to be a bad game. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Come on.
I've been watching Philadelphia.
What network are we on?
I don't care. Whoever the producer of that show is, tell the lady to wear a jacket that's recognized.
Come on, no, Coach. I'll let you call your timeouts. Greg, get off the A's back.
It's my question, man.
Come on, man. You can.
That was a little off.
It was the Golden Globes last night.
Listen, the Eagles have been off schedule all year. I mean, it's just been hard to watch. There just isn't a good chemistry on this team. When you see the coach screaming at the wide receiver, then you see the wide receiver dropping passes. It's just not happening. Lane Johnson's 35 years old. How much longer do you think he's going to play? You got to adapt or die in this league. They're not the only team that has some injuries on the offensive line, but they just cannot sustain offense. And it was an ugly game. It was an ugly ending to a season in Philadelphia, but I think they got to look at what offense are we running? What are we going to do to get some ball distribution and some consistency running and passing? Way too many negative plays in a hard-to-game watch. And they come out to start the second half with 3 straight 3-and-outs at home with a lead. You knew something bad was going to happen.
Greg, Justin Herbert, last night, another dud. Now, where are you on this guy? I'm a Justin Herbert truther. I've never thought he's the guy. I've probably said it to you guys that I don't think he's the guy. There's two schools of thought. His offensive line was so bad he got battered. There's nothing he can do. I thought he had time. Where are you on Justin Herbert? What is going on there? Is this how much of the blame goes to him?
I think in a game where you score 3 points, I think there's plenty of blame to go around for everybody associated with the offense, from play callers to quarterback to offensive line skill. It really, no one escapes when you score 3 points. So with that being said, I've only watched I haven't had the Chargers to study them in depth. I've watched them on TV a lot, mostly just their national games. Every game that I've watched, even the games that he's brought them back and they've won close games at the end and he was brilliant, it's a very unconventional style. And I chalk a lot of that up to they couldn't block me right now. I think you watch that game and he is constantly scrambling, constantly running. Now, how much of that is get the ball in on time and play in rhythm? Greg Roman's system is a little bit of a different, you go back and look what he did in Baltimore, a little bit of a different system. But from the beginning last night, there's no flow. There's no timing to the passing game. There's no hit your back foot, one hitch, ball comes out. It's a lot of scramble drill. It's a lot of extended plays. A lot of that is the offensive line. They're missing their tackles. They're out for injury. It's a very clunky style of offense. And when you play good teams and you play well-coached teams, you saw it in the 2-minute drive. They're in a 2-minute drive on the plus side of the 2-minute warning, where if you sub, the defense is allowed to match. And every time a receiver would come out,
that was crazy.
Vrabel would take their time. And it was like a hockey shift. Very different than under the 2-minute warning where you're not allowed. They won't hold the ball. So little things like that, they're just not clean. And for as good as they played on defense, the offense was just obviously underwhelming.
Talked about a lot of negative stuff so far, which it is. I'll end it. Any positive takeaways from the play? It was a great round of football. Great routes out of that game last night, which was an ugly one. Unbelievable games. I think before the Patriots, not one game, which is a crazy stat, was more than a one-score difference during the entire game. It was back and forth, back and forth. Coach, takeaway from the weekend.
Yeah, I think you got to have great quarterback play, certainly in the fourth quarter. And what Matt Stafford did to Carolina, Caleb Williams did to Green Bay, and how about Josh Allen, those two drives in the fourth quarter? Your quarterback has to really step it up, man, in crunch time. And I think you got to have a fourth quarter closeout defense. Credit Tre'Davious White of the Bills, that tip pass that Cole Bishop intercepted. You need to really credit the 49er defense. This is a no-name defense. I'll bet everybody on here can't name 3 or 4 starters for the 49er defense. They played their brains out, man. But I think you got to have a fourth quarter pass rush and a clutch playmaking quarterback. And I think that's what's going to help you advance the most.
Greg?
I think I agree with Coach flat out. If you don't have a quarterback, you can't survive in this league. It's more and more evident every season that goes on. But, I think my biggest takeaway is the parity of the NFL has maybe never been greater. And I would argue, yes, there's flaws and every team's got their warts, and sometimes the style of play is not perfect. But I'll tell you what, you can make an argument the NFL has never been more entertaining. I mean, even the game I did, that Rams-Panthers game, yes, the Panthers lost. They could have won. Tell you what, the Panthers, Bryce Young played his ass off. Dave Canales proved that he's a legitimate bona fide NFL coach. I mean, they played arguably one of the best teams in the league, albeit at home, as one of the largest playoff underdogs, home underdogs of all time, and had the lead with 2 minutes to go. So I think you're seeing from the top teams to that next tier, that margin getting smaller and smaller. I think that's great for fans. I think it's great for the future of the league. And, every game, whether it was the game I called or just sitting on the couch yesterday, just taking it in as a fan, every game was so wildly entertaining. It's the best product in the business.
How about the analytics, Dave? I want to ask you this question. The analytics of football has certainly changed in the last 10 or 15 years.
Everyone's going for everything.
The Chargers get the interceptions to start the game. You're on the road. You're in New England. You got 4th and goal at about the 3-yard line. He goes for the points. He doesn't get anything. I think it was a really sagging moment for the Charger sideline to come away with nothing. You saw Liam Cohen go for it last 7-3. He has a chance to make it. 10-3 before the half. These points come back to get you. I'm just curious how you guys see these analytics, because the coaches nowadays can just go to the press conference and say, well, the analytics said go for it. I'm curious to hear what your take is.
Yeah, I like going for it. I mean, to me, one of the more glaring, it was early, but Carolina went for it, I think, on their side of the 40. The Rams took the ball, scored, got the lead. They battled back. I do like going for it. I didn't mind. And Harbaugh, by the way, I think is still one of the more conservative guys out there. Like, he did go for the points after the turnover, which I had no problem with, because if you kick a field goal there, it's still a major win for the Patriots. The drive started at the 10-yard line. So if you hold them to 3, I don't think that changes the tenor of the game. The Patriots leave the field being like, wow, what a great stop. Yes, they stopped, but Harbaugh also punted, I believe, at like the 50 on 4th and 2. He did take the field goal. So he's an example, I think, of somebody still and even at Michigan he was. Everybody else, it's the new guys. It's the Canales. It's the guy in Jacksonville. Those guys, it's Madden football. They're going for it at 4th and 2 at their own end.
Yeah, I think the only listen, I'm a huge proponent. I've been very clear. I am pro going for it. I think field goals get you beat. I think these guys understand that especially with the new kickoff rule, if I'm going to kick a field goal at the 2-yard line, for me to get 3 points and give you 32 yards on average of field position advantage because of the new kickoff rule and where you start, I think there's so many factors that go in. I think big picture, though, and you can see it on social media every time. And it was the weekend of the 4th downs, right? And it started in my game with
A lot of guys not getting them.
Yeah, and a lot of them didn't get it, but no one ever talks about the guys that do get them, right? No one talks about Philly going for 4th down inside the 10 and they get it. No one talks about that. The only reason the Panthers are in the playoffs is because week 13 against the Rams, they went 3 for 3 on 4th downs. 2 of them were like 60-yard touchdown passes to pull that upset, or else they're not even in the playoffs. So I just think people are realizing, if I was a coach, and granted, Coach, you've coached a lot more games than I'll ever see, I would never kick a field goal unless it was the game-winning field goal, or I'm talking like 4th and 8, 4th and 10, just real long, unless I'm like a 45-plus yard field goal. I think the days of kicking 30-yard field goals, 32-yard field goals, they're just not worth it unless it's the game winner. And I think teams are buying into it. And I think more teams would do it if you didn't have to go stand at the podium after the game. I think standing at the podium after the game, answering for why you failed going for 2, why didn't you take the points, right? I think it's so much easier to go up to the podium and say, hey, I trust my defense. I trust my kicker. It's a lot harder to stand up there and go, you know what? I went for 2, it backfired. I went for the touchdown, it backfired, but I would do it again, right? That's hard to do. I think a lot of coaches are uncomfortable with that. And the guys that are in the playoffs and the guys that are winning all these games certainly aren't afraid of that.
I would take 3, like 4th and 3, 4th and 5, sometimes depending on where you are. I would be much more willing to go for it on my side of the field, because I think the yardage in between the 20s comes pretty easy in today's NFL. So, like, all right, if I go for it at my own 40 on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, get stuffed, I punt it, I think they're going to come back to that area of the field pretty quickly. And then that's really when, and Greg's talked about a little bit, so when you start getting to the red zone, that's when these games are won and lost. Who's putting the ball in the end zone, who's kicking field goals. But the yardage in between in most of these games, these teams go up and down the field there. So who cares if I give them the ball at the 40, we're just getting into when the game starts. But if I punt it, they're going to be right back there. That's how I look at it, Coach. And I think it's really, when I think about it, the only way to look at it.
Yeah, I think you got to play it game by game. I think in a single elimination tournament, you got to really collect your thoughts. But we all remember Detroit going forward a couple years ago in San Francisco when you got a chance to make it a 3-possession game. I'm sure there's a lot of second guessing no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, but that's an example. I mean, you go against what you've done the entire life. All right, I appreciate you guys coming on. I know we're locked in again. We got a game tonight. I will say I hate that. We talked about I don't like this game tonight. from a coaching perspective, especially, you lose one day of preparation, in rest and all that. But we got one more game tonight. Great weekend. I know, Coach, we got you back. Greg, we talked. Your stock keeps going up. There's a guy on the other network. He's making. He looks like he's on drugs or something when he's calling games. Your stock is going up. So congrats for that. We'll see you guys later.